In this video we're going to be breaking down the Photoshop file of this Liverpool AC Milan poster that I did for Liverpool Football Club back in September. Massive thank you to Dave Will for getting me involved in the project, so let's get straight into it. So we started off, wanted to create some sort of Champions League colours. I didn't want to overuse it, I wanted to keep to the red, so we just put a gradient in the background. Then I included a red structure. Let me just take the mask off a minute. So we just drew a rectangle, gave it the color red that is provided, and I wanted to just try and blend it in to the background so it's just not as sharp around the edges. The brief was to try and include the cop, or Liverpool fans, some way or another. So we actually got an image from Getty, and I wanted to blend it in then using some smoke down the bottom, as well as a couple more layers, just so that the edges have started blending in a bit more. I added smoke to the corners. I also added a gradient map just to darken the image itself, so it's more red than all different colors. And the idea was that I was going to use these lights at the top, because it's obviously a game under the lights. So I kind of wanted to make the top a bit darker, just so that it blends the crowd in a little bit more. I added some sort of spotlight to the top left, just so I could bring this area to be a bit lighter. So we used 3 players. So we got Salah, Alison and Manny. The first one I did, I think, was Mo Salah. So let's just take everything off, including my camera raw filter. So obviously we cut him out, and we've got a Premier League ball. So the first thing we did was we wanted to replace the ball. Just so that it's a Champions League game, we don't want the Premier League ball show him. Added a bit of a motion blur to it and a camera raw filter just to alter the color correction on it. Added some shadow and some lighting, and added a gradient map just to change the contrast slightly. With Mo Salah himself, started off with a camera raw filter. It's one that I use pretty much on all my players. It's one where I like to bring down the vibrance and the saturation, take all the contrast, highlights and shadows out of it, just so it's easier to work with. Then we started adding in some of the darker areas, just using a soft brush tool. I then added a curves layer, which is set to luminosity, so that it didn't affect the color on Mo Salah himself. And then I just brought the darks down and masked it out. So if we just disable this mask, that's what it's like before I masked it. And then when we enable it, you see it's just the lower part of the body we did this with. Then the next curves layer again is luminosity, blend mode, but this time we've added more light in. And as you can see, without it masked out, we've mainly gone around the edges, around his hair and down the sides. And one last one I added was another gradient map at luminosity. And this again, it's just bringing the lights up. and slightly bringing the darks in, not too much. Again, if I take the layer mask off, it affects the entire player, which we are pretty much doing anyway with the mask, but I just wanted to make sure it wasn't going overboard. Then we added some floor shadows, which I'm from my shadow pack that's available for download. And that was Mo Salah pretty much done. The next player we added was actually Alison. I wanted to increase the size of the players as we went upwards, so we're just going to take everything out again, take the smart filters off, disable the layer mask. So as you can see, the first thing I did was I blended him out using my cloud smoke brushes, and then added a camera raw filter, which is exactly the same as the Mo Salah one. And then we added a gradient map, which is again set to luminosity. I guess if you go through a lot of my files, you'll notice that I use luminosity blend mode quite a lot for my highlighting. And again, we've got a curves one, which is the shadows, and another curves one, which is the highlights. I then wanted to blend part of the glove and the rest of this body in, because the idea was that I wanted to double expose another fan stadium shot. So we then added this one in. Again, I blended this in with a layer mask. It's set to lighten blend mode, just to give it that bit extra pop, rather than just having black on red. And then this gradient map is a dark red to red, just so that the darker areas down here aren't black. I then added a bit of smoke here, just to make sure this part blends in with Mo Salah there as well. So then the last player we've got is Manny, and then we've gone for the bigger headshot here. So if we take all blend modes off, so this is the shot that we started with. Again, apply in my camera raw filter, blending them in. Again, this was more with a softer brush tool than using the clouds, just so that he kind of stops right behind Mo Salah here, and you can't then see him behind Alison as well. I then use the soft brush tool with an overlay blend mode just to lighten particular areas. Then we added another gradient map with luminosity blend mode. This one I actually didn't mask out because I actually didn't mind the final result overall. As you can see here, I brought pretty much the lights and the shadows up pretty much similar. It just adds a bit more contrast. And then we got another blend mode here, which I think I made more dark here. I brought the darks up rather than using the whites. And then I just blended this in using a layer mask. And then just to blend behind Mo Salah and Alison into Manny, I just added a couple of smoke screens, just so it's not as sharp behind him. Then we add the text to add. Typically, you know, I didn't really know what I was doing with the text at first, but we ended up with this, and then I was like, it's white, it's all too much white. So I took the gradient map, gradient fill from the back, sorry, and added it to the VS and the Champions League text. Next part was adding the crests and the details of the game, the location, the date and kickoff time. Supplied with certain artwork that obviously has to be included as well. And then to blend it all together, we use a texture, which is this texture. I Yes, I got it from Texture Labs. They're a great resource site, great YouTube channel, so shout out to them. And then we're blending it with hard light mode. What I do then is I merge all the layers together to create a smart object, and this is when I then add my final camera raw filter. So we get it at this. I added my final camera raw filter, which I basically touch up everything that I don't like. So as you can see, I use the adjustment brush quite a bit in this, just to lighten certain areas, bring the color out. We brought the clarity up slightly and brought the vibrance back in, and then there's a small adjustment on the lighting and the dark on the curves, and I think that was pretty much it with this. It was just to make it less, basically give it a bit more contrast and a bit more light in certain areas. Then we just export this. I export as a PNG or ping, however you want to pronounce it, and then we obviously fire this over. There was another version for Instagram story as well. We're not going to walk through that. It's pretty much the same layout, same design, just a different size. Yeah, so basically that's pretty much how I put this together. I think it took around 2 hours maybe, on and off. I went through a phase at the beginning where I didn't like the initial images I chose. The composition just wasn't right at the beginning. I wasn't using textures initially. I wasn't using any sort of cloud / smoke brushes, and I just didn't like it at the beginning. So we scrapped that after half an hour and we started from scratch, choosing a couple of different renders. And once you get into the flow, it all sort of starts to come together. So that's it for this breakdown video. There was a few requests to do this, so drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.